Good morning, colleagues. Can you hear me? Hello?
Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good morning, Brother Umar.
How are you, Chief?
I'm fine, and how are you?
I am good.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
okay. Trying to set up myself in this technology.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Brother Kabu, the internet is back.
Yes.
And working for you.
Can you send me those two things yesterday to my actual official email?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just forward them to me now.
Oh,
Just
okay.
forward the two mails to me now through my official. It will be
All right,
better.
let me do that. Let me do that now. So I've done it.
Okay. Thank you.
Good morning, comrades.
Morning.
How are you?
Very well.
Hi.
Brother Umar?
Yes.
I've only seen one. There were two documents.
Yeah, but there are two separate emails.
Okay, I've just received the first one. Okay,
Yeah,
maybe it
I've
will
forwarded,
arrive soon.
I've forwarded the both of them.
Okay, thank you.
To fair.
Have you received it, Kabu?
I will receive. I've received. I will get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good morning, Kabu. Good morning, brothers and sisters.
Yes, good morning, Violata. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Did you see the email from Carol?
No. What is she saying?
Just check your emails, then let me know what you think.
Okay.
Okay, we can continue by WhatsApp.
Okay, let me check.
Okay, great.
Invio? Invio?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes. What is the title of that session? Because I can see, I can go to the program that I have is the old one. Is the one supposed to have been chaired by Dr. Sylvester?
Yes, the one that was supposed to be moderated by Caroline when Dr. Sylvester was presenting. So Caroline is now the presenter because for some reason, Dr. Sylvester is not available.
Okay, what is the title? I don't have the program in front of me.
Kabu.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm going to.
Kabu.
Yes.
It's the session that has trade union responses. It's the second session.
Yeah, but I'm not seeing the program with me. I don't have it down.
That's why I'm reading for you. It is
Okay,
the
just read
second
it.
session that has the presenter. The first one is trade union responses in terms of COVID by Dr. Mwamanzingo.
Trade union responses.
Yes. And then the second
No, trade union responses in terms of what?
COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
It will be presented, that's the key presentation. It will be done by Dr. Mwamanzingo.
Okay.
And then the responses to Dr. Mwamanzingo's presentation will be done by the regional trade union responses. That is Eric Manzi from ITUC Africa and Brother Nzunda from OATU.
As discussants?
Yes.
They are the discussants?
Yes.
Eric and Zunda?
Yes. Giving regional trade union responses, okay?
Okay.
And then the
perspective of regional trade union responses.
Yes. And then the next presentation was supposed to have been done by Sylvester on opportunities for digital solutions for Eastern Africa Trade Union.
For digital solutions?
For Eastern Africa Trade Union.
No, opportunities for digital solutions for trade unions.
Yes.
For trade unions.
Under COVID-19.
In East Africa.
Yeah, Eastern Africa.
Eastern Africa under COVID-19.
Yes. So I will do that presentation because Dr. Sylvester just had an emergency today.
Okay, you will do it.
Yes.
So you want me to moderate these two sessions?
Yes. The moderator was supposed to be David, but he's not feeling well. So I was going to stand in for David, but now I have to do a presentation. So I can't moderate and also do a presentation.
No, I will moderate. But the first one, can I also do the moderation of the first one where Dr. Mohammed is speaking?
Yes, it's the whole session for that whole.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the second part of the session for today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm off now.
Okay.
I'll just be on standby in case there are challenges with internet on Kabu's
Yes,
side.
yes. Just be on standby, like it happened yesterday.
I will send you an invoice.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I have even bought that data bank now. Also, what do they call it?
Okay. Are we sorted with Farouk for the session that Brother Follow was supposed to moderate?
Omar, did you see your email?
Okay, I see a thumbs up
Okay,
from
awesome,
him.
awesome.
I have seen it, I have responded.
Okay, thank you, Omar. Thank you very much.
Okay, but Brother Follow will be with us anyway.
Yes, I just needed a backup just in case he has issues with connection.
Okay.
Carol, don't worry, I can be a very good backup.
Thank you, Farouk.
Okay. 18 so far. Good morning, Raphael.
Good morning, Violeta. Good morning, colleagues. I hope everybody's doing well.
Good, good, good. Okay. We have Dr. Mamadzingo with us now. Okay, Eritrea. Ariani. Okay, Kabul. Caroline.
Yes, in Violeta.
Yes, the last session where David was supposed to moderate. What have we agreed on that one? It's Kabu.
That's the
Yeah,
one Kabu
I'm doing now.
moderating.
Okay, let me also reflect it on my. Okay, good. Then follow it's Omar. Okay. 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 For the first session, do we all have our discussants, Dr. Omolo Jacob, Dr. Evelyn Akechi, and I've seen Dr. Kuglulos on body from the Institute. But the other ones, can we confirm whether they are already with us?
Yes, they are all in.
Okay, including Raphael Pius, who is the lead speaker on
Yes,
that one.
I can see Dr. Omolo, I can see Dr. Akech and Dr. Kuglu. They are all in.
Yes, just a clarification. Carol.
Yes?
Your presentation, who is the discussant?
No, it doesn't. It is part of the discussion. It's a continuation from Raphael's presentation.
Yeah, because when I look at it from the old, program, opportunities for under COVID-19, I see Professor Trowell Kalu
No, Kabu, wait,
That
I'm
is-
sharing the new
Oh,
program. Just give
okay.
me a minute, okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one is, we
The
revised.
old one.
Yeah, we revised it.
Okay.
Okay, we are 21. And it's, okay, just after 10.
That's it. Baba.
You can let us know, Kabu and Carol, how much longer do we need to wait? At the moment, it's 25, of which some of us are the backing up team, including the interpreters. How much longer should we wait? How much longer should we wait? 6 minutes past 10, but we are still 25. I see some still logging in.
Nous sommes déjà 25 alors que le temps vraiment s'évapore.
I mean, based on experience,
Combien de temps est-ce qu'on peut attendre?
Don't need
Dans mon
to keep on
expérience,
waiting.
n'a pas besoin
If
de
we can
continuer
kickstart,
à attendre.
others coming, they
Si
can
nous
join the
pouvons
platform. Because the
commencer,
number is
les
like,
autres vont nous
I'm seeing it is
rejoindre.
increasing.
Parce
Now we are
que
28.
le nombre continue à augmenter. Maintenant, nous sommes à 28.
Invio? 28.
28. Yeah.
And you know, the idea of waiting, I don't see much need for that.
Okay. Okay, so
Because we may not know we are seeing 28, but
yes,
the fact is that some of them are using just one equipment to listen or participate in the whole process. So the number might be even more than 28.
you are right. Okay, so over to the moderator for this session.
Who is the moderator?
Omar Farouk.
Okay.
He's standing in for Brother Follow.
Okay, colleagues, good morning. I hope you can all hear me loud and clearly. And today is the second day. I am like Sister I'm for Brother Kasahun Follow, the General Secretary of the Horn of Africa Confederation of Trade Unions. I greet you all, comrades, union. Can we mute for those who are going to speak? Please, thank you very much. And we will be having, colleagues, our panel discussions, but I want to welcome every one of you from Bujumbura to Asmara, who is participating in these discussions, which are very vital for the existence of our unions, for the fight that our members and our workers wanted to be involved. So the panel this morning is starting, as you have seen in the agenda, on revitalization and transformation, emerging best practices. And we have a very important lead discussant and also other discussants who participate. I have with me here in the agenda, Raphael Pils from ACTRAF, whom I see is already connected. And then after his presentation, we will have 3 discussions. I'm not sure Sister Yolata can advise us if Dr. Koglo Lawson Body from Alre ITUC Africa is able to join us, or is confirmed to join us.
He's already on with.
Okay, very good. So colleagues, we will have then 3 other discussants, Dr. Omolo Jacob, a senior lecturer at Kenyatta University, and Dr. Evelyn Akech from BSI Eastern Africa, giving us global unionist experience and revitalization. And in this regard, I wanted to hand over the floor to our comrade from the ILO ACTRAF, Raphael Pils, to make the presentations. Raphael, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, General Secretary, Brother Omar, and good morning, dear colleagues and friends. Let me first of all express my sincerest gratitude to the HACTU and EATUC colleagues for making this webinar series possible, and of course to thank all trade unions to attend. Let me also apologize because they are doing renovations next door, which may be the reason for some background noise. So my sincere apologies for that. So as we have an impressive lineup this morning, I will start right away and prepare the ground for the interventions of our colleagues from the sectoral union. And my presentation builds on and also complements the intervention of yesterday. And today, as mentioned by Brother Omar, the discussion focuses on trade union revitalization. That means that after the more alarming messages and numbers of yesterday, today we focus on the feel good story. Let me quickly put on my presentation. Normally you should be seeing the presentation. Yes. So as a quick reminder, Professor Visser yesterday, he developed 4 future scenarios for trade unions: marginalization, dualization, replacement, and the 4th, the focus of today, revitalization. But I also think that the first three ones, they already have certain dimensions of the renewal of the revitalization question embedded in these 3 scenarios. For instance, reaching out to young workers can be considered as an answer to marginalization, or organizing and representing the most vulnerable workers, people in precarious employment, in an ambiguous employment relationship, as an answer to dualization, which was the 2nd scenario, or for instance, collaborating with other progressive actors, NGOs, social movements, can be considered as an answer to replacement, which was the 3rd scenario. I will focus today as what can be considered as good examples across the world, and this to complement the experiences from the region. And I will do that around the 4 main axes that servicing new members, such as young workers, workers in the informal economy, the gig economy, people in the green economy. The 2nd one is speaking and acting as one, which is understood as the ability to act collectively across sectors, the national, regional, global levels. The 3rd one is unions have to assure sound internal governance through a transparent set of rules that governs the mandate, the management, the elections, the activities, everything of trade unions. And the 4th one is kind of the culmination of these previous elements, that is to strengthen effective and inclusive, representing all workers, social dialogue on the issues of today and tomorrow. So on the first axis, there are good examples where we see that trade unions can meet the needs of traditionally underrepresented workers. For instance, we have examples of unions that have organized formal economy workers, which actually is really complicated, and also to integrate these workers in the formal structure of the trade union movement. And I'm just going to take some elements or some examples from across the world. We have an example in Jordan, where the trade unions, they have advocated for easing the regulations to find access to work permits for refugees. In Jordan, these are Syrian refugees, and to facilitate their access to the formal labor market. I think somebody has his microphone on. Another example could be the case of Senegal, where we have. Yes. Another example would be, for instance, in the case of Senegal, where the private security workers have been organized. They entered into collective negotiations to regularize workers in the informal economy, to enhance access to medical insurance, to ensure contribution to pensions and social security. Another example would be in Uzbekistan, where they developed a system of temporary dual UN membership, because you have people that work, for instance, as cotton pickers in temporary work. So that's a way to also deal with informal economy workers through this idea of dual UN membership. A second element of good examples of organizing workers, underrepresented groups of workers are, for instance, organizing workers in the platform economy. In Argentina, you have the Platform Economy Staff Association, which is organizing workers in the gig economy through a new union, a newly established union, however, supported by the main trade union federations. In the case, for instance, of the United Federation of Danish Workers, 3F, so a Danish union already, they have the experience of having a collective agreement with Hilfer, which is a Danish-owned digital labor platform. And the agreement addresses matters such as the so contested employment relationship, but also the transition from a freelance status to a more stable employment status, but also insurance coverage, dispute resolution. Also in the field of organizing young workers, maybe I take the example of Australia, where they have the young worker centers, which is a one-stop shop for young workers to learn about their rights at work, to seek personalized advice, legal assistance, and they use virtual organizing, social media, podcasts, TikTok, etc. In the case of Bahrain, they developed an app to mobilize and to recruit unemployed youth workers in the country, and they established a nationwide alliance with different civil society organizations on the topic. However, as mentioned before, it's also important to incorporate these workers, including the young workers, in the trade union structures, the leadership, but also the priorities of the union, identity of the union, and also the tactics and the methods for the union. So this brings me to the second axis, and that's strengthening trade union internal governance. So democratic internal governance is not only key for effective trade union operation, that is to deliver, but also for assuring credibility among workers and the general public. And we learned from previous workshops that the youngsters are interested in the ideas and the objectives of unionism, but not necessarily the way of doing things. So we have some examples in Vietnam or in Ghana where the union really put the internal governance really front and center by focusing on the actual performance of the union, like measuring the performance of the union and the union leaders, making sure that's guided by integrity, transparency, accountability, etc. Now about the speaking and the acting as one, or I refer to it as trade union cooperation. We've heard that there are many regions in the world where there's a lot of proliferation, fragmentation of trade unions, but we also observe a lot of cooperation. I'm taking an example, for instance, of Lithuania and Ukraine, where there's a collaboration, a campaigning across borders to organize drivers, the Ukrainian drivers in both countries, both in Lithuania and in Ukraine. In the case of Benin, there's the joint declaration among the main trade unions and a kind of a charter to establish a new union structure and a joint decision making. In the case of Mauritius, we have the Council of Trade Unions, which is also an effort to bring together the main trade union confederations in the country. With regard to the fourth and the final axis, that is inclusive and effective social dialogue on the issues of today and tomorrow, I think that Professor Visser, he mentioned that the new members, for instance, in the Path for Women, have been driving new issues and to make sure that new issues are the priority for the union. And I think if you have a look at the reality of today, that could be the informal economy workers, the platform economy drivers, the workers in the green economy, that they drive the issues of the union in the future. Another example could be the Sustainable Development Goals. I know there are many examples of unions that have been engaged into that. Some examples there relevant in the context of COVID. I think in the Russian Federation, the unions have been engaged in national social dialogue to secure the adoption of new legislation on teleworking, for instance. In Moldova, the trade unions, the main trade unions, have worked together for years on the new law on labor inspection, including making use of the ILO supervisory committee. In Colombia, the unions have been involved in alternative social dialogue fora, for example, at the municipal or departmental level on alternative issues such as skills development, territorial planning, and all this in a post-conflict situation. And by means of conclusion, and then I leave the floor to our moderator and the next speakers, I would like to come back to one key element that runs through these various dimensions of revitalization, and that is the capacity to critically reflect, that is to anticipate change, that is the capacity to adapt, that is a willingness to experiment. And it's a good moment to do this as the ongoing crisis, I think Corona, is essentially about that. And I think the session of tomorrow will further delve into through the idea of foresight thinking in this capacity to critically reflect and to change and to adapt to a changing environment. So we have many speakers left. So I leave it at this. Thank you so much for listening, and over to you, General Secretary, Brother Omar.
Thank you very much, Brother Raphael, for the presentation and setting the tone of our discussions and the presentations that we wanted to have. But as you could see, we have 3 other discussants and who will, responded to his intervention, and mainly what we think is very important in terms of what kind of actions that we as unions should be taking. So we have, our colleague, Dr. Koglu Lawson from ITC Africa, who's going to bring from the ITC Africa perspective, as well as we will have Dr. Evelyn Akech bringing from the Global Union perspective, and also Dr. Omolo, who's bringing from academic perspective as well. So I will refer to Dr. Omolo Jacob. Friend, a colleague, the director of ILO for Eastern Africa, Comrade Wellington Chipepe, asked as well, but my colleague is, I will give the floor now to Raphael Mills. Omolo, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, moderator, my brother and friend, Omar Farouk. It's good to see you after a long time. Colleagues, thank you so much for organizing this meeting. And Raphael, thanks a lot for bringing out very key issues in the areas of trade union revitalization. You have mentioned things which in my view are very important. The 4 areas on organizing and servicing workers, speaking and acting as one, the issue of sound internal governance and effective and inclusive social dialogue, in my view, is very important. And my discussion here is how to connect this, particularly within the context of the ongoing pandemic, and how we as trade unions and workers can build back much better. As we are all aware, the COVID-19 has caused quite a bit of demand and supply shocks. And it has actually affected employment, income, and livelihoods. And these effects will be long lasting. So that means that we as trade unions, we need to start thinking of how we are going to revitalize based on the areas that Raphael has mentioned. We know in certain countries, and I know Eastern African countries have not been excluded, the government came up with certain measures to cushion workers, employers, and even industries against the negative effects of COVID-19. At some level, tripartite partners, in this case, government, unions, and employers, signed memorandum on still to reduce the effect of COVID-19. So then the issue is, to what extent did we integrate the element of research in identifying the key issues that were supposed to go into the memorandum? In my view, as part of the revitalization process, we as unions and also workers need to strengthen our research capacities so that we can engage in impact bargaining. Impact bargaining in the sense that we may have had collective bargaining agreements that are going on, but with the onset of the pandemic, there are revisions that unfortunately in most countries have been done mostly by the employers without taking any cognizance of suggestions from the unions. So to me, that impact bargaining element would have been the first thing to be done based on research outputs. Then based on what were implemented by government and what is still continue to be implemented, the safety net packages that governments may have come up with, including the clauses that are signed by the parties, it might be time for us to start identifying what is working, what may not have worked, and therefore advocate for adjustment. If I were to give the example of Kenya, I know that our tripartite partners signed a memorandum of understanding. But this memorandum of understanding was signed last year. So now it will be the time for us to start evaluating the extent to which it may have addressed the issues that it was supposed to address. One of the areas contained in the memorandum is a freeze on pay increases in the collective bargaining agreements. So to what extent would this still be sustainable? Then I think that even as we continue with the processes of adjusting from the negative effects of COVID-19, unions may need to establish the differential impact of COVID-19 on workers and use it to inform collective bargaining. Because when we get into collective bargaining as a process of building back, then we cannot consider that workers may have suffered equally. There may be some disproportionate effect on young workers, some negative effect on older workers, women workers, and all the many other categories. But I also think that within the context of revitalization, and also in the face of the pandemic, we as unions may need to reassess the existing protections provided in our collective bargaining agreements. What kind of clauses are there? Are these clauses the ones that we want to continue with? For example, the COVID-19 has actually laid bare the fact that maybe the provisions for sick leave that we are having in our clauses may not be adequate. Maybe the provisions for occupational safety and health that we are having in our clauses are not adequate. Whilst that people work from home, do we consider our homes as workplaces? So that in the event that there is an occupational accident, you get involved in an accident while at home, but also working, would we still be covered by this occupational safety and health provisions? The other thing that I may need to mention is the fact that, and Raphael, you have mentioned it very well, there is a significant shift of workers into the informal economy. And therefore, we need to continue developing strategies on how to organize informal economy workers. But we need to remind ourselves that the strategies of organizing informal economy workers is totally different from the strategies of organizing formal economy workers. For informal economy workers, personally, in the context of, Raphael, what you mentioned, effective and inclusive social dialogue, I would advocate for working together with the informal economy workers to build collective bargaining platforms. Those collective bargaining platforms can be used to engage government at the local level and even at the national level on policies, laws, and institutional frameworks that are required to support growth and development of the informal economy. They can also be used to promote access to social protection, whether as individuals or as groups, but also explore within this particular context the issue of digital organizing. So session chair, I want to stop at that so that we can also benefit from the wisdom of the other discussants. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Brother Jacob. And it's quite clear what you have said from the trade union perspective, as well as the environment in which we are working and what we get, to address that. So now I'll give the floor to Dr. Evelyn Jacob from PSI.
Yeah, thank you so much, Omar. You allow me to switch off my video so that I have a clear network. I also want to join Dr. Molo in appreciating Comrade Raphael for your insightful presentation in terms of some of the strategies and best practices. Now, I want to give my perspective from Public Services International. We basically organize workers within the public sector, across board, health, education, other utilities, among others. Now, in terms of the first thing that Raphael talked about, organizing and servicing, especially that takes into account the young workers and the women, in addition to informal workers. A number of our PSI athletes, both in Burundi, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, and Rwanda, have actually ensured that they have a structure for young workers as part of the requirement to be an athlete of PSI. So all of them actually have got young worker structures, including women's structure, where they have the leadership for all these categories of people. In addition to that, as PSI, we expect that all the athletes, when it comes to attending the various workshops, the training themselves, must observe the gender parity of 50-50 representation, both for the male and also for the women. But at the same time, it is a requirement that within any of the meetings that we have, minimum of 30% should actually be young workers. Why do we do this? It allows the young workers to be able to express their views, but also learn a number of etiquettes of trade union values. So we do that a lot. We also have special workshops and training workshops specifically targeted for the young workers, for all the athletes in our sub-region. So we have, in terms of capacity building for the women leaders, how do we join the trade unions? How do we get our voices amplified out there in a male-dominated union movement? We also give the same opportunity to the young workers. So in each of the countries, we always ensure that every time the athletes are going to have workshops, there's one that targets the young workers specifically and also targets the women to build their capacity. Interesting enough, we also appreciate as PSI that a number of our services are currently either being outsourced or privatized. And that means we cannot ignore a number of workers who are within this value chain of supply. So to that effect, we've actually decided to empower the capacity of our athletes to engage with the informal sector, both in the area of waste and also in the area of energy. Now, recently we had a number of meetings, both for Kenya and Uganda, where we're able to engage with workers from the waste sector, and that is the informal economy. While we bring them on board, we realize that waste management is part of social service provision. And if you don't help them to amplify their voice and also demand for the protective equipment, you're losing as a trade union. So we've actually also extended the capacity of our athletes to be able to engage with informal workers, especially the waste sector and those ones within the energy sector, in terms of the supply chain within these areas here. Now, Comrade Raphael and also Dr. Molo talked about issues of effective engagement, and that is including social dialogue. I want to appreciate that the current dispensation calls for us as trade unions to go beyond the bread and butter requirements of our athletes or members. The world is changing and we must locate ourselves within the current debates at the global level. From the tax justice itself, talk about trade, talk about climate change, talk about a fair world where migrants are actually also given their rights. We've encouraged our athletes at the same time giving them opportunity to participate in the areas of tax justice and trade. For instance, we always engage the young workers, both in East and West Africa and also Arab areas, and empower them. How do we engage ourselves in the areas of tax debate? What is tax justice? Why do we do this? We realize that the young workers' needs are totally different from our needs as the old tax. They want to locate themselves within the current global debates. And that is what makes the trade unions to be different, beyond just asking for increment in salaries, among others. At the same time, in terms of ensuring inclusive social dialogue, we work with progressive civil societies like Oxfam, talk about Action Aid, talk about corporate accountability, talk about WEGO, to be able to build our solidarity. So that if you're talking about an issue at a national level or a global level, we have so many partners who are able to amplify our voices, because together we are better than working individually. I also want to talk about the issue of speaking and acting as one. Within our structures, we have what we refer to as National Coordinating Committee. Now, this brings all the athletes at national levels. This brings all athletes or PSI from different sectors. The main aim of this platform, and I want to appreciate the various countries that have actually used it, it enables the athletes in their various countries to work together and engage with the government. For instance, if you look at Uganda and even Rwanda, currently we're having the issue of rationalization, which is something that IMF wants to see all governments do within the region. That is reducing or merging some of the government agencies. We had the athletes in Uganda going to meet the Minister of Public Service, calling for their inclusion in this debate, because young workers are going to be affected, a number of workers are going to lose their jobs. And if you do not locate yourself in these debates, then you lose your relevance as a trade union. So the NCC has actually given opportunity to a number of athletes to talk together. It doesn't matter whether they come from different national centers, but when it comes to the issues that affect the public sector workers, they always amplify one voice. So we look at that as something that other unions or other countries can actually copy. How do we have a collective voice without allowing our differences at individual level to separate us? And finally, I just want to note that even as trade unions, we are currently appreciating the digital dispensation. Now, to this effect, we've actually asked all our trade unions to provide us with young workers whom we are taking through training or digitalization. What is going to be the impact of digitalization on the future of work? Because whether they want it or not, we must contend with the fourth industrial revolution, including the 3D. So we've encouraged our athletes, and we have a number of young workers who are currently being trained on digitalization. How do you actually manage it? What are the issues when it comes to data protection rights, which is very critical. So I'm hoping that we can actually be open to learning as trade unions to be able to adapt to the changing environment. I want to submit.
Global, but what he can just highlight.
Thank you very much, Sister Evelyn, for the presentation. You have touched three important areas where PSI is pursuing actively on the issue of bringing more young workers in the fold in their own affiliates. The question of addressing especially the digital, digitalization and using, organizing digital workers, especially that involves question of young people, and also the point that you have mentioned that we need to have allies, we need to build, we cannot win this fight alone. So we need to have other progressive allied forces to be participating with us and taking active role. So like NGOs which are like, I'm not recommending all NGOs will be in the same line with trade unions, but there are like-minded NGOs who pursue the same agenda as we do, and we should align. I agree with you with that. Now, last but not least, I will go to the our colleague from ITC Africa, Dr. Koglo Wilson, to make his presentation. Koglo. Koglo, Dr. Koglo, can you hear me? Hello? I can't see Koglo. Maybe he has some technical hiccup. Okay. He's there but muted. I think Koglo, you're muted. Could you unmute yourself? It seems our colleague from ITC Africa may be having some technical hiccup. Now, yeah, before I go back to the two discussants, I wanted to give some comments from participants, some two participants to comment on what they said. If anybody wants to have comments, please raise your hand and I'll give you the floor. Okay. Well, okay, in that case, I don't see any hand raised. So I think I will go back to Raphael. Okay, I can see my colleague Maasho from Addis. Maasho, you have the floor.
Thank you, our moderator, Comrade Omar Farouk Osman, and thank you for the presenters. I already write on the chat that I want to reflect. I think this is a small milestone that my organization is doing in collaboration with FES. CETI is developing a workers platform. This workers platform is mainly intended to improve our service accessibility to our members and potential members. Basically, this platform is planned in two packages. One is a mobile application, so everyone who can use the smartphone can access our service, can see what are the benefits, how they can organize under our organization. So the second one is website. Website is similar to any organization. We have website, but it is inactive. So we want active website which interlink with the mobile application. And hopefully in Ethiopian New Year, we will launch. And I can say this is the first in its nature. We will try to learn from other countries. Only we get from I think Argentina, as Brother Rafael mentioned, but the rest we didn't find any such type of technology-based organizing and delivering service. I want to say this one point. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you very much, Maasho. Carol, have I seen you raising your hand?
No, I just wanted to check if Kuglo can talk. I'm seeing his mic has been unmuted.
Yeah, okay. Brother Kuglu, can you speak?
Oui, I could speak.
Okay, okay. You're
Okay.
most welcome. Please.
Can I go ahead?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You have the floor.
Merci au modérateur et merci pour cette opportunité qui est donnée à la CSI de participer à ce séminaire pour intervenir dans le cadre de cette section sur la revitalisation et la transformation, les meilleures pratiques émergentes. Deux questions ont été adressées à l'Institut de la CSI Afrique. Première question, quelles sont les meilleures pratiques émergentes de l'Institut pour revitaliser les syndicats par la recherche et la formation? Deuxième question, sur quel type de recherche et de formation l'Institut s'est concentré en ce qui concerne la revitalisation des syndicats? Après les interventions qui m'ont précédé, pour aller à l'essentiel, nous aimerions dire que, en ce qui concerne les meilleures pratiques émergentes de l'Institut de la CSI Afrique pour revitaliser les syndicats par la recherche et la formation, l'Institut s'est organisé autour d'un programme organisé, structuré en trois types d'activités. Le premier programme concerne l'éducation et la recherche. Le deuxième concerne la coordination de réseaux de syndicats. Et le troisième domaine d'activité concerne les lobbying et les plaidoyers. Pour réaliser ces activités, dès le départ, l'Institut a structuré ses activités sur quatre principes. Le premier principe, pour pouvoir revitaliser les syndicats, c'est de tenir compte des travailleurs aussi bien dans le secteur informel que formel, en prenant en compte les réalités auxquelles les travailleurs sont confrontés. Le deuxième principe, c'est d'avoir à l'esprit que l'approche, l'agenda des syndicats doit être un agenda de changement. Troisième principe, les syndicats africains doivent apporter des changements souhaités à leurs membres. Et quatrième principe, la prise en compte de conscience, sachant que ce changement doit être provoqué par des efforts collectifs au niveau local, national et international. C'est sur la base de ces principes que les programmes de l'Institut sont organisés. En ce qui concerne le domaine, nos meilleures pratiques, nous pouvons citer dans le domaine de l'éducation et de la recherche, ce que nous appelons en anglais le New Year School. Ce programme permet aux syndicaux, des femmes et des jeunes des syndicats autour des questions en lien avec la transformation structurelle, le travail décent et le développement de l'Afrique. Chaque année, eu égard aux changements, eu égard aux mutations en cours, l'Institut de la CSI Afrique s'organise pour conduire les réflexions pour amener les syndicats à réagir sur toutes les questions de développement pour apporter les informations nécessaires en vue de l'amélioration des conditions des travailleurs. Donc, depuis plus de 10 ans, chaque année, ces forums sont organisés et ces forums mobilisent la participation de tous les syndicats à l'échelle continentale. En plus de l'éducation, il y a aussi les activités de recherche. Ces activités de recherche concernent les thèmes spécifiques identifiés par les syndicats. Ces dernières années, au niveau de l'Institut, il y a une recherche fondamentale qui a porté sur l'état du mouvement syndical africain, qui a permis de mettre en évidence les forces, les faiblesses, les opportunités du mouvement africain, d'aborder une question fondamentale qui a été soulevée par la présentation du docteur Raphaël, la question de la gouvernance, et aussi d'aborder la question en lien avec la viabilité financière des organisations syndicales. Cette recherche a concerné une dizaine de pays représentatifs de l'ensemble des 54 pays africains. En dehors de cette recherche, ces 3 dernières années, il y a eu les recherches sur la protection sociale et notamment sur son extension aux acteurs de l'économie informelle. Un autre domaine de recherche a concerné la gouvernance budgétaire. Vous savez que le budget de l'État, c'est un élément important qui permet de mesurer la mise en œuvre de la politique nationale au niveau de nos pays. Donc, il est essentiel que les syndicats maîtrisent les questions en lien avec la gouvernance budgétaire et soient capables, après la maîtrise, de pouvoir faire les plaidoyers efficaces et de participer, comme aussi l'avait souligné le docteur Raphaël, de participer au dialogue social inclusif à l'échelle nationale. Un autre axe de la recherche a concerné la responsabilité sociale et environnementale des entreprises multinationales. Et vous savez que dans les pays africains, les multinationales sont implantées et beaucoup ne respectent pas les droits humains et les syndicaux. Il est important aussi pour les syndicats de pouvoir réaliser des recherches sur le respect des droits humains et syndicaux afin de pouvoir faire des propositions, interpeller le gouvernement. Donc, en dehors de ces recherches, le deuxième axe du programme d'activité de la CSI Afrique concerne la coordination des réseaux des syndicats. À ce niveau, l'Institut a coordonné les travaux de 3 réseaux. Nous avons un plan syndical qui travaille sur les questions en lien avec le développement, surtout avec les ODD, les objectifs du développement durable. Le deuxième réseau que la CSI coordonne, c'est Africa Labour Research Network. Dans le cadre de ce travail de coordination, plusieurs recherches ont été menées ces dernières années au niveau de ce réseau qui implique plusieurs organisations de recherche syndicales de plusieurs pays, et la CSI et l'Institut a joué un rôle de coordination au niveau des activités. Le troisième réseau, c'est un réseau des comités d'analyse et de recherche syndicale impliqués dans 8 pays de l'Afrique régionale. Et la CSI coordonne ce réseau pour promouvoir la recherche et l'éducation en lien avec le travail et pour promouvoir aussi les organisations, les activités à l'échelle régionale. Troisième type d'activité, c'est les lobbying et les plaidoyers sur les activités réalisées.
There's no English translation.
The interpreter has muted herself.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I move?
Yes.
Okay. Concernant la deuxième question, sur quel type de recherche l'Institut s'est concentré en ce qui concerne la revitalisation? Donc, pour répondre à cette question, là aussi, nous avons deux éléments de réponse. Le premier élément concerne la recherche. Rapidement, l'accent et le second élément concernent la formation. S'agissant du premier élément, l'accent a été mis sur les recherches en lien avec la revitalisation concernant les thèmes suivants: l'état des syndicats en Afrique, l'extension de la protection sociale dans l'économie informelle, la formalisation de l'économie informelle, l'impact de la pandémie COVID-19 sur les travailleurs en Afrique et l'élaboration de documents syndicaux et de politiques de la jeunesse. Concernant la formation, l'Institut de la CSI Afrique, pour apporter une réponse adéquate pour la revitalisation, a pensé à une initiative qu'elle a appelée l'Académie africaine de développement de leadership africain. Donc, cette académie vise, dans le contexte actuel, à accélérer la formation des leaders africains autour de 5 modules de formation. D'abord, le module 1 qui concerne le mouvement ouvrier africain vise à apporter quelques réponses à la question suivante: quel avenir pour le syndicalisme africain face aux enjeux et défis du XXIe siècle? D'où vient le syndicalisme africain et où allons-nous? Le deuxième module porte sur l'économie africaine et ce module tente d'apporter des éléments de réponse à la question suivante: que révèle la situation économique sociale de l'Afrique vis-à-vis du reste du monde? Que peuvent faire les syndicats pour inverser ces tendances? Le troisième module porte sur les enjeux contemporains et émergents, surtout en lien avec la question de la protection sociale en Afrique. Quel mécanisme pour une couverture minimale des travailleurs? Le quatrième module porte sur la construction d'un mouvement syndical durable, le renforcement des capacités, un levier pour consolider l'action des syndicats africains. Et le dernier module concerne l'Organisation internationale du travail. Atouts et opportunités pour promouvoir l'action syndicale en Afrique. Donc voilà quelques éléments de réponse pour ne pas monopoliser la parole. Et nous savons que l'importance de la recherche et de l'éducation est reconnue par les syndicats au niveau de l'Afrique de l'Est surtout. Et ce séminaire témoigne de votre attachement à ce sujet. Mais nous devons pérenniser nos programmes de formation et de recherche en accordant un soutien à la fois technique, logistique et financier aux organisations syndicales. Nous espérons que ces éléments de réponse pourraient être instructifs pour le débat. Nous allons nous arrêter pour permettre à d'autres intervenants d'apporter leur contribution. Merci. Merci.
Thank you very much, and Commander Koglo, for the intervention. I think we have heard you loud and clearly. Now, I will give two colleagues to make interventions, and then I will go back to Raphael and the other speakers. So anybody who would like to take the floor or the comments?
Yes, good.
Hello?
Good morning.
We cannot hear you properly.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello? Yes, I want to participate.
Hello?
Yes, Agasio from South Sudan.
Okay, please go ahead.
From South Sudan, I want to participate in that seminar.
Sorry?
Are you with me? This is Agasio from South Sudan Workers Trade Union.
Yes, yes, Comrade Agosio, please proceed.
Very good, thank you very much. I want to register my voice because yesterday I tried, but the network was not good for us here in South Sudan. And I was very happy. I have listened from some presentations, and yeah, and the one of this morning also I captured some information. And I would like to say that thank you very much for this one in East Africa, and I am very happy also to be part of East Africa, and then trade union transitional in East Africa. I think for us here in South Sudan, we have a lot of challenges.
And my brother,
Commission of Workers Trade Union in informal economy.
Your network is not good. We can barely hear you, please.
Okay.
Hello? We know you are talking, but it's very difficult to grasp what you are saying.
Okay.
Comrade Agasio, can you type your comment in the chat box, and then we will read it out for the presenters, please, because we can barely hear you. If it's okay, you can just click chat and then type your intervention or question. Yes, because the internet is terrible, but we will give you an opportunity again. We'll check if your internet is okay, but in the meantime, just try to type it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other colleague who would take the floor, who wants to make comments or ask question?
Okay, thank you very much. Caroline. Okay.
Please mute yourself, Comrade Agasio. Thank you. Any other comment or question? Okay, in the interest of time, I will now proceed and go back to, okay? Thomas? Okay, in the interest of time, I will now go back to our colleague from ILF Traf, Raphael, to respond to some of the interventions that the three discussants have made. Raphael, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Thank you very much, Brother Omar. And first of all, my apologies. I saw in the chat that there were some difficulties also with my connection. So sorry for that. So I hope it goes well. Thank you so much, dear colleagues, for all the comments and sharing experiences. And it's really a privilege for me for you doing that. So thank you so much. I can take maybe some elements together of the different intervenants and maybe structure it like that. So first of all, thank you, Brother Omolo, for putting really the ongoing pandemic central in the discussion, also in the discussion on revitalization. You mentioned that indeed there is not one crisis, not one pandemic, but there's a very differentiated impact depending in which country you are, in which sector you work, in which type of employment relationship you are. That will highly determine how the pandemic impacted you. But I also think, secondly, that trade unions have shown a lot of resilience. It's not the first time. They have been through different crises before, and I think many unions have shown a kind of a capacity to adapt to the situation. So I think that's really interesting, and that relies also to our session of tomorrow, I think. You also mentioned that it has been an opportunity, the crisis, to have a critical reflection, for instance, on existing collective bargaining agreements, to have a look at existing clauses, for instance, those that touch upon occupational safety and health or telework, and to reflect upon our common practices from that new angle. So that's great. The second theme has been the call from various colleagues, I think, Brother Kuglo, Brother Omolo, to focus on the technical capacity, the education capacity, the research capacity of unions. And this, I think you mentioned it for impact negotiations. I think that's really great. That's a good term. So I think we need that capacity for our advocacy activities. The third element that came back is a call for doing things differently. I think Sister Evelyn and Brother Omolo were pretty vocal in that regard. If you want to reach out to informal economy workers or youngsters, you have to use different tactics. You have to mobilize around different topics. I think Sister Evelyn mentioned tax justice, data protection, those topics that resonate with youngsters, but also to enter into different type of alliances and different type of platforms, new types of ways of engaging with NGOs, with other type of organizations. And I think we're often still very critical in doing that. We always come back to the representation question. Unions are representative organizations, where NGOs have a different dynamic. They may be more value-based or have a technical capacity or things like that. So I think it's really great that, and I think that's a call for doing things differently in these different dimensions. And then maybe a final element is a call for or shedding light on emerging practices. Our brother from Setu, he mentioned the mobile app they developed, but also I think Sister Evelyn, I think it's great what you mentioned on how you reach out to young workers, that actually you have to have young workers structures as a conditionality to be an affiliate, or you have an obligation of gender parity. You have percentages for young workers in workshops. I think that's really great. These are really good practices. So I leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Brother Raphael. Brother Jacob, do you like to make a response on some of the issues raised by co-discussants or the lead discussant?
Yes, thank you so much, Comrade Omar. Just two things. One is that when we are talking about trade union revitalization and transformation, we are looking at the issue of power resources and capabilities. So we have 4 power resources, that is the associational power, the institutional power, societal power, and structural power, which trade unions have, and they can utilize these power resources for revitalization and transformation. But besides those power resources, there are also capabilities. So I look forward to a situation whereby we have sustained structures for research and workers' education and training. Because as it is now, we as trade unions, we are still building our research capacities. And we want to see a situation whereby we have at least good capacities so that we are able to exploit the power resources that we have and the capabilities. Number two is that I also acknowledge the fact that our trade unions have now tried as much as possible to establish structures for integrating and mainstreaming young workers and women workers in the trade unions, including the leadership of those unions. But I want us to see a situation whereby we move a step further so that we can have also the young workers and women workers sit in collective bargaining and social dialogue tables. Because we can have the structures, yes, but then the effectiveness of those structures will not be seen until we see those voices in social dialogue discourses. The other thing is also hearing those particular voices of young workers and women in public policy dialogue discourses. So those are the interjections, Comrade Omar. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the swift interventions and coming back to the topic. Now, I wanted to go to our sister from DSI, Dr. Emily.
Yeah, thank you so much, comrades. I just want to start with the last point that Dr. Omolo has just talked about, and ensuring that women are part of the social dialogue. I want to give a good example, that is Upeo, Uganda, where the chairperson is a lady, the general secretary is actually a lady, and they've had very good outcomes in terms of their social dialogue, including better working conditions for their workers. So I want to agree with him in affirmative. It is important to have the young workers. They know their challenges, and if you're not on the table, you're not on the menu. Always let's remember that. Importantly, just want to go back to what Raphael talked about in terms of the adaptive capacity. The first one talked about capacity to reflect critically. As trade unions, we must be willing to actually find a link between the current discussions, whether climate change, whether tax justice, whether a just transition, how will this actually impact on our labor force? Because when it comes to just transition, a number of workers are going to lose their jobs. So how do we get ourselves ready to counter some of these? And what mechanisms are we going to put in place if we're going to really revitalize our unions? Now, in terms of the second capacity talked about, anticipate change, it's very critical. Within this dispensation of COVID-19, we're expecting a number of governments to undertake austerity measures, which will have direct impact on some of the sectors, especially public sector workers, but also lead to a number of precarious work and increase in formal sector. How are we going to counter this? Then two, how do you actually transit people in the formal economy who have now gone into an informal economy to come back into the trade union to build our voices and against a number of challenges we're going to face? But that also means that we should be willing to take the mantle to also talk about the issues of accountability. Because as trade unions, that is where our money comes from. Ask the governments to become accountable to the citizen as part of adapting to the virus, willingness to experiment. I want to echo what somebody said yesterday. I think that was one of the discussants in the first discussion. We should be willing to get out of the old ways of managing trade unions. Let's be willing to open up ourselves, especially to the inclusion of young workers. They're dynamic, they might be radical, they might not have your traditional way of doing things, but they are the future because you're actually expiring. I teach accounting, and one of the things I say, every asset has got depreciation rates or depreciation period. So even as old tax we're depreciating, let's be willing to allow the young workers take up the mantle to shape the future trade unions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Evelyn. That's very clear. And we need to get that in our heads and make sure that we act on it. And last but not least, I will just go to our brother from ITUC Africa, Dr. Koglo. Brother Koglo?
Allô?
Yes.
OK.
Please go ahead.
Un mot de fin. Comme vous le savez, les défis auxquels font face les syndicats sont nombreux. Et pour répondre à ces défis et construire des organisations syndicales réactives et durables,
There's no English interpretation.
Okay. I say the challenge from the union are very strong. To give some answer to this challenge, it is important that the union...
Okay, please switch into French so that our colleagues, French speakers can...
Okay, can I go ahead? Okay. Je disais que les défis des syndicats sont importants et pour construire des organisations syndicales et continuer d'être présent dans le dialogue social, l'importance de la recherche est nécessaire. Et mon mot de fin, c'est que en tant qu'organisation syndicale, nous devons, dans le contexte actuel, pour répondre à la revitalisation, nous devons réfléchir à des moyens d'éducation créatifs non conventionnels, notamment les formations en ligne, via les radios ou bien via les téléphones mobiles. Nous devons réfléchir à ces moyens. Nous devons aussi relancer les méthodes conventionnelles qui ont fait leurs preuves, comme les cercles d'études. Et nous devons mettre l'accent aussi sur les stratégies de lobbying et de plaidoyer réussies en prenant en compte les expériences, les bonnes pratiques et échanger sur la base de ces bonnes pratiques pour pouvoir peser dans le dialogue social parce que le plaidoyer et les lobbies sont importants pour participer au dialogue social et faire passer nos propositions pour le changement. Et nous ne devons pas oublier aussi la nécessité de renforcer les partenariats solidaires et de développer aussi la collaboration de recherche et d'éducation. Donc voilà quelques éléments que nous voulions apporter à ces débats très riches sur les questions de revitalisation et de transformation. Merci pour cette opportunité qui a été donnée à la CSI Afrique de prendre part à ces échanges. Merci.
Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup, our brother Dr. Koglo, for the intervention. And it's really clear, and it's very good discussion. And I want to thank our lead discussant, Comrade Raphael Pils from ACTRAF, and the three other important discussants, Dr. Omolo Jacob, Dr. Evelyn Akech, and Dr. Koglo Lawson for the insightful presentations. I also want to thank our participants and colleagues for attentively following this session. It's my pleasure to moderate, and I would like now to hand over to my sister Caroline to advise the next session. I think Brother David Etiang is going to moderate. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Omar, for that awesome work you've done. I really appreciate it. We'll take a 5-minute break before we go to the next session, which has some few changes here and there. Brother Kabu will start off the session with an overview on behalf of Comrade Mohammed, who is on leave and dealing with an emergency at home, to give time to our regional organization, ITUC Africa and OWATU, to do their presentation, and then I will finish up that session. So let's take a 5 minutes break. You can grab some water, go to the washroom, and then back. But just before you leave, I would like to also recognize some of our cooperating partners that have joined us. I see Ruben from Elo Norway. I also see Lusungu from DTDA. I'm still learning how to pronounce it. I'm so used to LOFTF, our Danish comrades. And I think I saw Alice somewhere yes, she's in. So thank you very, very much for joining us in this discussion. So let's take a 5 minutes break. We'll be back at 11:27. Okay, I think the 5 minutes are up. I will give the mic to Brother Kabu. Brother Kabu, are you there? Kabu.
I don't seem to see him from my end.
He's in.
Oh, he's
Yeah,
there, but his microphone is muted.
maybe he's away.
Unmute your microphone, Kabu. Yeah, let's give him a minute.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Thank you. Let me take this opportunity to welcome all of you to our next session, which is about trade union responses in times of COVID-19. And Brother Mohammed Wamazingo was supposed to make a presentation, but as a result of an emergency situation, he's not been able to be with us. So he asked me to convey his apologies for not being able to talk to all of us on this important topic. I will try to step in to give the perspective, because what he was supposed to talk about is essentially based on an audit which was undertaken by ACTRAV in terms of the trends vis-a-vis the impact of this pandemic on the world of work. After my brief presentation, I will give the floor to our two regional colleagues, the two trade union regional representatives. Brother Eric Manzi, representing the ITUC Africa. He's no stranger to all of us. He has been around for a while. Before, he was Secretary General of SESTRA in Rwanda, and also played an eminent role in the East African Trade Union Confederation. I think in one instance, he was chair of that sub-regional trade union outfit. Now he is Deputy Secretary General at the ITUC Africa. He will also give us a regional perspective from the point of view of the ITUC Africa. And that will be followed by an intervention by my close friend, Brother Emmanuel Zunda, who is Deputy Secretary General of OATO, the Organization of African Trade Union Unity. He will also speak from the perspective of OATO. And we will conclude by having an intervention by Sister Caroline, who is also deputizing Sylvester, who was supposed to talk to us on the topic, opportunities for digital solutions for Eastern African trade unions under the COVID-19 crisis. So broadly, that is just to give you an idea in terms of how we are going to conduct ourselves. I will now begin to make a brief remark on the trade union responses in terms of COVID-19 crisis, as has been analyzed by the Bureau for Workers' Activities. As all of us are aware, the COVID has actually impacted the world of work. I think from the start of this seminar, we have actually also been vividly reminded in terms of how the pandemic has in fact changed our way of work, and to what extent it has also impacted various categories of workers. In the audit that was undertaken by ACTRAV, first and foremost, we tried to have a picture of who were affected by the crisis in terms of workers. And broadly looking at it, we have been able to identify core categories. First, the healthcare workers being in the front line, providing healthcare services to those who contracted the COVID pandemic, and they were in the forefront in terms of the fight. And many of them were also affected in their line of duty. Some of them pay the ultimate price by way of loss of life. Others contracted the sickness, they were able to recover. But nonetheless, we have to also understand the difficulties under which many of them were working. Often, in many instances, they were not provided with adequate personal protective equipment in terms of the basic gadgets that they ought to put on to protect themselves whilst attending to patients. So we have actually also been able to identify them as one core group that was affected. The other category, of course, in the context of Africa, is not a small group. It's a huge population in terms of workforce. The workers in the informal economy. Health regulations to safeguard the health of the population, and they introduced some measures. One was such lockdown measures, and in a way that greatly affected the workers in the informal economy, because this category of workers, the majority of them needs to eke out a living by way of going out on a daily basis to do their small businesses. But when lockdown measures were imposed, that, of course, adversely affected them. In fact, some of them died or had some extreme difficult situations to manage, basically as a result of the lockdown. So for them, it was two pronged challenges that they were faced with. The crisis in terms of the pandemic as one, but at the same time, the measures put in place also impacted them greatly. And again, looking at the small size nature of their businesses, some of them, their businesses also collapsed. So even after lockdown, for them to again come up and start their life was also quite challenging, and it's still quite challenging for a good number of them. Again, we also have another category, the migrant workers. They suffered, in a way, discrimination. Some of them, our brethren, we received the news in terms of how migrant workers, particularly African migrant workers, were mistreated in China, for instance, in Saudi Arabia, and some of them were forced to, leave their countries of work because of the pandemic, and for the fact that the discrimination also extended to them, could not permit them to stay in those countries of work. They were forced to repatriate. A huge population came, and most of the countries were not prepared in terms of the capacity to receive them. So migrant returnees were also one big category that. Again, we also look at the situation of the self-employed workers and also the casual workers. They were immensely affected, and also those in the micro and small enterprises. They were also adversely affected. Another category, as you know, are also in large proportion in some of the sectors, particularly the healthcare sector, and also as caregivers in many instances, the majority formal economy, we find a large percentage of women. According to the findings of ACTRA, we have projected in terms of the statistics that 70% of women constitute the workforce in the informal economy, as well as 70% in the healthcare sector. So you can understand when we talk about frontline workers, the vast majority of them are women. And also when we talk about the informal economy, are adversely affected. Again, in the course of the quarantine measures that were imposed, where lockdowns were imposed, many of the women were also forced to stay in homes. And we saw an increase in domestic violence, mainly affecting women. And this is also an important area that we have to consider. Many of them will not be able to transit from the informal employment situation that they are currently trapped in to be able to attain decent working conditions. So they have that big problem. And many of them also were adversely affected because their educational growth was interrupted. Schools were closed, and the opportunities for them to realize in terms of skill enhancement to get prepared for adequate preparation for entering into the world of work has also been adversely affected. Another group is the people with disability, workers or persons with disability. They were also adversely impacted. In fact, they face marginalization in terms of social and economic, as well as health and public service access. Those services could not be easily accessible to them. In many instances, for the developing countries in particular, they do not have adequate amenities to cater for the needs of people with disability. And we saw a pronouncement of that in the wake of this crisis. Refugees have been adversely also affected, and because they were living under crowded conditions, overcrowded conditions, and some of the measures put in place in terms of social distancing, they could not, because of their peculiar situation, they could not observe those social distancing protocols. And many of them, once the pandemic entered their camps, got spread rapidly, and many of them were adversely affected. When we are talking about the death toll, we see a large number of such death toll reported among refugee population. Now, I would like to go quickly to the economic sectors that have been also affected. Construction is one area in terms of a sector that has been affected. Tourism, the hospitality industry, the entertainment industry, manufacturing industry. Lockdowns, of course, led to a situation where many of these enterprises were not able to operate. And we could understand, of course, the challenges that also that was engendered, that also forced many employers to take draconian measures by way of laying off their workers for the fact that their businesses could not operate. They were challenged in terms of maintaining the employment relationship. And many workers in many of these sectors that I've spoken about, we are adversely affected. And the trade union responses, I will go through quickly. What do we need? What do trade unions need to do? First, to build the political will to be able to respond to this crisis, have a picture of the gravity of the problem that ought to be looked into. First and foremost, we have seen serious gaps, for instance, in the area of social protection, but also even in the area of social dialogue, and also in terms of overall labor protection coverage. We need to have, the trade unions need to have a political picture in terms of the problem that is confronting the world of work, and build the determination in terms of will to respond to these challenges. Secondly, is to contribute to the strengthening of social dialogue mechanisms. This is important. We have seen the potency of social dialogue, how it has helped where it has been used effectively to address the challenges engendered by this crisis, but also previous crises even. Dialogue is important because if the key stakeholders are able to come together, they can be able to negotiate and come up with consensus in terms of agreement that all of them can live with, to also safeguard the whole, productive environment not to be disrupted. Where dialogue has not been used effectively, we have seen, very unfortunate developments. Even in the course of this crisis, much as one could not expect strike actions, we found in some instances where strike actions were imposed simply because the mechanisms that are supposed to bring the parties together in terms of the stakeholders in the labor market, if they could not see eye to work and find solutions to the problems, that also in a way also further disrupted the effective functioning of the labor market itself. Again, it is important to build knowledge and capacity. The problems that we have require also our informed positions to be able to address some of the problems, particularly in the area of policy development. It is not can manifest. In that equation, trade unions need to also be fully prepared with adequate knowledge to be able to influence and shape the policy debate that can arise during the dialogue process. That is very important. And again, even though we are talking about the crisis, our number in terms of the trade union membership is low. We need to reflect on how to increase that membership to a comfortable situation where we can see the movement as quite representative and also visible enough with strong collective bargaining clout to be able to also influence the debate. Number is also very important. It is not only about knowledge, but also the scope of coverage in terms of density of the trade union movement is also very critical. Again, there is need for us to continue, for trade unions to continue to promote the priorities of workers. What are of in the informal economy? For workers that are disabled, for workers that are also in the front line, what are their basic needs? What do they need? Not only in the context of this crisis, but in building back better so that we can actually achieve a situation where everybody is brought on board. And the priorities, for instance, in terms of ensuring that there is decent working conditions for all, could require the need for a minimum wage, for instance. Do we have it as a functioning reality across the majority of the countries in Africa, for instance? We need to put that floor in place. We need to put that floor of social protection for all. This is the only way we can bring the majority of the people in the bracket of realizing decency in terms of their working conditions. We need to have those basic floors in place, but not only to limit ourselves to the floor level, build upon the floor.
I think Kabu's internet has gone off.
Yeah,
Kabu?
I don't see him. Okay. Yeah, I see him, but he has no microphone. I think it's internet problems. Anyhow, I think we can still continue with the session. My name is Inviolata. I'm taking
No,
over.
I've come back.
Okay.
I'm using my phone now.
Kabu, you also only have around 3 minutes to wrap up.
Yes. Again, we cannot continue to rely on the old way of doing things. Trade unions need to think aloud. What new services can you provide? Because we have in this equation, categories of workers to whom, for instance, wage bargaining cannot apply, yet we need to cater for their own basic needs. So trade unions have to be quite innovative in terms of service delivery to be able to attend to the needs of all and sundry. That is very, very important. And lastly, to also build partnership. We are not alone in this ecosystem. We need to also look beyond our own traditional partners to engage with other partners, particularly within the framework of the UN, family. There are a lot of consider our critical role in the development of the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework, where we have the opportunity to also interface with other UN agencies. So we need to look beyond the ILO and also build or forge partnership with other actors in this equation. Information is very important for the trade union movement, and that information, once you have it, is also to share it. And last, but by no means the least, is to build alliances. You need to build coalitions with other actors because the fight is huge. I was not fully prepared for this intervention. It came just as a surprise to me at the very late moment, but I've tried to just whet your appetite. And without much ado, I would like now to give the floor to our discussants, although we call them discussants, but looking at the fact that we have not been able to effectively have responses, I would like them to also give us their own genuine perspective in terms of what they have been able to do as trade unions in rising up to this huge crisis. To invite Brother Eric Manzi from the ITUC to Eric Manzi.
Yes, thank you, Brother Kabu, to give me the floor. Good morning, comrades. Thank you once again to invite ITUC Africa to participate on this important workshop. And also, I'm very happy to be here to unite with my original family. As Kabu said, I was very active in this region before to join the ITUC Africa Secretariat. And also I'm happy to be here with many of I recognize some faces, some names, and it's an honor for me today to present on behalf of ITUC Africa the perspective on ITUC Africa. So first, let me can you allow me to share my screen? Let me see. Okay, okay, I think it's okay. And also I will present in English in sense to improve it. First, on behalf of ITUC Africa, let me see how to. The first, I think Brother Kabu bring out some of the points. And in terms of interest of time, let me pass straight to present what we are doing actually in ITUC Africa in terms of COVID-19, but especially because we did many things during the last year and this year, but we are thinking about what we can do in terms of economic recovery. But before Kabu present many things in terms of what is the opportunity actually we have. The COVID-19 in terms of the situation of social dialogue, the situation of the categories of workers are affected actually the situation that we change the way to work, especially in introduction of new technology. That's all are for us the opportunity what we can work on it actually in terms of to address the challenges and to provide some solution. First, in ITUC Africa, first I would like to jump on that Kabu presented before in terms of to actually improve improve the capacity of the trade union in terms of to participate effectively in the national policy making, especially in to promote the decent work agenda. It's very important. It's very important, and that's why I said in partnership with jointly with ILO Africa Region Office and ACTRAV, actually we are working very hard in terms of to benefit on the reform of UN systems. Because actually after the reform of UN systems, there is an opportunity for the trade union to be consulted, more easy to be consulted. But it depends on the trade union. We need to improve the capacity of that trade union to be able, to during the participation, during the consultation, to influence the drafting of the the country development program through the UN Sustainable Development Cooperation frameworks. It's very important, but also because we need a good environment to work on that area. That's why the intervention of ILO and the ILO Actrav, especially some specialists in the field, but also some directors help us, to have a contact with the UN resident coordinator at national level in terms of to facilitate the trade union to accede to them and to have the opportunity to influence the country development program. Actually, we have succeeded, and the outcome are still low because it's a new process. We need some time, to continue to improve it. But we have some success, like Somalia. In Somalia, we succeed less in Zimbabwe. But we are still working actually with some country because we can take on board all the country immediately because it's a long process. It's the complexity of the process influence our decision to work with some country. And in this region, we have Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, and Kenya actually, but we have also other countries, Chad, Ghana, Nigeria, Zambia, Malawi, etc. The second point where we have put more effort, because here I present just the mainly activities or action we have done actually. But we have others, but that's the mainly we have put some effort. The second point is the second issue is the employment, the question of employment, because as the first intervenant presented, because of the situation of COVID-19 pandemic, we have many job losses, etc. And actually, we need to work very, very strong in terms of to create more jobs. And there we are working on employment, but especially employment, youth employability, to change the education systems, through the entrepreneurship skills, but also the possibility offered by digital economy. Actually, it's a big opportunity, especially for youth African young people. It's very, very important to work on it, but we have also other topics in terms of prior learning, certification, etc. Another issue is very, very, very important is the opportunity we have actually, because as you know, the AfCFTA is the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, is the African market, single African market, is actually functioning, and we are working very hard in terms of to see how that long-awaited single African market for goods and services facilitates the long-awaited free movement of people and to mobilize regional investment in terms of especially to promoting social justice and decent jobs. We are working actually in terms of to strengthening the capacity of trade union and in terms of to ensure that liberalization can't have detrimental consequences on jobs and the country ability to meet the decent work agenda among others. Actually, we are working with 5 countries only because it's a new process. We need to have more time to implement it. We have started by 5 pilot countries, and this region we have Rwanda on board, but we expect to extend next year in 2022 with Nigeria, South Africa, Morocco, and Kenya in this region, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, etc. But step by step, we will probably extend for all the countries in Africa. And actually, maybe one of the outcomes we have researchers in terms of to support our argument. If you go to the lobby and advocacy, we need to have an argument. That's why we are carrying out 7 researchers in the 5 countries, but also some other research focused on some topics, especially the question of informal economy and the impact of FCFTA implementation on the situation of women. That's the 7 researchers as actually is going well, and we expect to have the first findings on September this year. But we have already developed a trade union guide which will be published very soon in English and French, and to provide some basic understanding on FCFTA and a broad overview of why unions should be concerned by that continental free trade agreement. Another thing is to what Kabu said, to strengthen the capacity in terms of social dialogue. The work we have done in terms of access to social security and social protection, especially in social protection, is to campaign on innovative ways to financing social protection systems, and lobby to set up a global social protection fund for low-income country. Another thing is what Kabu said, we can work alone. That's why in NATUC Africa, actually, we increased the number of NGOs, academicians, social movements, as well as the research network, which we are working traditionally, and in terms of to have many allies and to work together in different issues like socio-economic issues, informal economy issues, health, education, climate change, etc. And also I mentioned, especially because we try to improving our work and coordination with sub-regional organizations like East African Trade Union Confederation, SATUC in Southern Africa, in Western Africa, in Central Africa, because we need to be together in terms of to see how to coordinate and to improve our efficiency. Another thing is the education program. Yes, we need to have a good education program and to improve it. That's why I think my colleagues Kuglos presented before. We are developing a new curriculum in terms of Trade Union Leadership Development Academy. It's an education program. Actually, we are working with some expertise, and also we appreciate the support of Actrav, and Brother Kabu is and one of focal point on that point. One point very important, actually, we are working on it, is to develop our own e-learning platform, because the new context, the new normal context, we say actually we need to have an education program in online education program. That's why we have developed our all e-learning platform. Actually, we will try to. It was previously dedicated for youth, but we extend it actually for all. And the first test will start in the end of this year. Finally. Also, in terms of digitalization, I know the Caroline will present some points about the digitalization, but I need to say something. We need to understand that. Sorry for the noise outside. I'm sorry. It's the people. Okay, it's good. Okay, the needs of trade union, the digital label platform, because actually we have you have many services on delivery at home because of the situation that people need a trade union more than ever. That's why I say the trade union actually we need to organize them, to helping them to recognize their right, etc. But also we can use the digitalization as an opportunity to adopting a new approach of organizing, to develop the new strategy, the new strategy for grievance, the new session, and also in social dialogue and negotiation, we can use the digital opportunity. Actually, it's very important to mention it. And also 2 points quickly is we have continued to work on all other different issues in terms of occupational health and safety at work, occupational safety and health, OSH, the question of minimum wages, the question of taxation, debt relief, global governance, inclusive multilateral systems, etc. in terms of, to provide the good environment in terms of recovery. And finally, in the end of my presentation, of course, right now, the moral imperative is to ensure universal access to COVID-19 vaccine. We are campaigning on it. Dear comrades, it's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you for your kind attention. Over to you, Brother Kabu.
Thank you very much, Brother Manzi. I think you have done justice to the topic. You have actually articulated not only in terms of what you are doing, but also looking in the horizon in terms of what needs to be done to achieve greater success that will be beneficial in the recovery, program. Of course, you have underlined, like I did, and is sacrosanct. It is the working modality, and we encourage the tripartite constituents to uphold that. You need it to be able to work together in the elaboration of national policies that can help nation countries to overcome their developmental challenges. And we want to thank you for that. One area you mentioned is the challenges you are having in terms of accessing the offices of the resident coordinators. That is very important. We are mindful of that, not only by way of the fact that we have been able to publish the trade union guide to help you in terms of how to navigate in that new environment. But we are working on realistic programs to make sure that there is this organic link between trade unions and also the resident coordinators. We cannot afford to leave trade unions out of that equation. If we are talking about achieving the sustainable development goals, then you have to be in the driving seat in that process, to be among the UN agencies, to be among the employers, to be among the government, to elaborate the national program. And in your own case, to also make sure that it is fully aligned with the Decent Work Country program, because that is the area where you need to ensure your full engagement level of the elaboration of the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework, also the national plan. Once all of these are aligned with the Decent Work Country program, there is hope that you can actually be able to achieve greater opportunities for your members and the working population at large. Indeed, you elaborated on the huge challenge of employment, more impacting on the young about decent jobs. And we have to look at that also, even in the context of the African continental free, so fully incorporated. I'm happy that you have initiated a program that will help you to achieve that, because I don't think workers, we are fully part of the whole process of the elaboration of this trade agreement. Nonetheless, you can come into the equation to influence the process to make sure that labor rights are fully incorporated. That is very important. Of course, education is important, like you rightly said, to build the capacity of the trade unions, the membership, all cadres to be fully, given the opportunities to build their own capacities. I want to thank you very much. Of course, the other areas you touched on are quite important. Us, minimum wage, tax, and also to look at all of this in terms of building the better environment for better recovery and resilient recovery. That is very important. I think just looking at the tax dimension alone, Africa is losing a lot. If we can, ensure tax regime that also take taxes from the bigger, allowing them to operate under the tax-free regimes, that can make a difference, because tax revenue is what we need to provide the basic social service, build the schools that we will need. Good friend, Brother Zunda, I hand over the mic to you and invite you to make your own contribution from the perspective of OATU, the Organization of African Trade Union Unity. Thank you very much. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Comrade Kabu. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Of course. You are speaking from Kilimanjaro, so there's no way we can miss your voice.
Thank you very much, the organizers, for this wonderful, online discussion. On behalf of OATU, I would like to take this opportunity to thank ITU for the invitation to participate in this discussion. I've been following the discussions from yesterday, although not fully, but in line with today's discussion and in line with the introduction by Comrade Kabu, I would also like to add that the COVID-19 is said to further, constrain Africa's progress towards attaining the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. And also we are in the same view that COVID-19 will have long impacts on efforts to reduce poverty and inequality. So the big question is how Africa will get back on track to meet the SDGs, especially goal number 8 on decent work and economic growth. As you might be aware that the COVID-19 pandemic has affected the implementation of the ILO Abidjan Declaration and its target. And we are lucky that the midterm review is being done. So we'll see how, the COVID-19 has really affected, and has somehow contributed to the retract of the progress we have been. Some of the statistics by the ILO show that the jobs, the impact is 4 times greater than that of the financial crisis in 2008. The other impact were well articulated by Comrade Kabu, so I don't want to go back to them. But just in the area of workers and their organization, I think the pandemic has severely affected workers and their organization across the world, and Africa has not been spared because trade unions activities have been disrupted, disorganized. It's very difficult for us to meet physically, of course, thanks to the technology that we are able to interact as trade unions. But it has also disorganized organizing and the membership recruitment, representations, as I said before, physical meetings, and the educational activities. But as it was raised yesterday by some of the presenters that due to job loss and loss of membership and dues, it has also affected the unions at national level and even at the continental level. So in line with the today's topic, what have been our responses as OATU? I think Cab also highlighted very well the responses, training responses through the audit which was done by the ILO, which we concur and support the observation from the ILO report. But again, I think the audit report came out clearly that the trade unions, although with these challenges of COVID, have the capacity to continue adapting to changes in the world of work and society at large. So that is the good news. So what OATU's responses to that effect? Some of the few responses in this COVID-19 period. Like other presenters, I think we have been able to organize some activities in connection with the awareness creation on COVID-19 and its impact, and also to encourage our affiliates to engage their respective governments through social dialogue so that they can participate in influencing policies and actions that might mitigate the impact of COVID-19. But also due to the pandemic, we are not able to organize physical education activities. So we use this opportunity to organize some online capacity building activities, looking at the decent work in COVID period, and also the issues to do with the social dialogue. We also follow the implementation of the WHO and the host countries' guidelines on the fights of the pandemic. But also in our small ways, we were able to mobilize support to the fight against the COVID. And also as a gesture, we even distribute some of the PPEs to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. But again, I said, because of the pandemic, we also organized some of our meetings online. And also we continued offer solidarity support in the support of against COVID-19, because we realize in some countries, e.g. Sudan, they use COVID-19 excuse to undermine the trade union activities there, even to undermine the trade unions functions in that country. we also continued promoting and defending workers' rights during this pandemic, but also offering online training for some of our members and our new staff. And also, we continued engagement with the AU, and some of the issues I think have been raised by Comrade Eric on the implementation of 2063 agenda, which has been severely affected because of the pandemic. We also been engaging the AU on issues to do with the migration and also the continental free trade areas. Those are some of the few responses from our side. But in line with the yesterday's discussion and some of the issues which were asked to highlight, I think we concur with some of the issues in line with the opportunities for revitalization. And we concur with the observation and views that understand the implication of COVID-19 and the transitions for workers and members. And I think we need to re-examine ourselves. Appropriate changes to be made in line with our mandates, values, principles, and actions. And I think yesterday they raised a number of issues, like decreasing rates of unionization and the aging unions, which is a fact. These are some of the issues really we need to rethink if we have to renew our trade union movement, especially in Africa. We are in a situation whereby trade unions are being replaced by NGOs and the other social movement. Yes, I think like the previous presenter have just said, yes, we have to collaborate and cooperate with some like-minded NGOs and the social movement, but they should not take issues. And I think also we concur with some of the observations that we really need to enhance our internal democracy and governance to make sure that women and youth are represented at all structures. We needed to put in place a succession plan, which, frank speaking, in most of the organizations, is not there. How, the aging leadership, the aging trade unions can be replaced by young workers and women. But also, I think we need to put in place new approaches on organizing and delivery of service. I think Kabu and the rest have said. And again, the COVID-19 has sought out something. We really need to digitalize. How can we digitalize the trade union activities and also enhance collaboration and cooperation with the other organizations at all levels? But most importantly, on how we can enhance a social dialogue and continue capacity building in the area of revitalization and transformation, and also to make sure that there is effective engagement at all levels. But Comrade Moderator, I don't intend to take much of your time, just to end by saying that as OATU will continue with the online activities and to reach out as much as possible we can. And also in line with with what my brother Eric has just mentioned, we also continue to campaign on herd immunization as a long-term goal for fighting pandemic. Because we have been hearing and witnessing that there are some countries now, they are not allowing other citizens to come into their country if they are not vaccinated. At the same time, if you look at the level of vaccination in Africa, is even below 3%. So when can we reach that 60% of herd immunization? So I think it's a challenge. We really need to campaign for that, to make sure that all African countries have access to vaccines. Because like now, vaccines have been monopolized by the West. And for Africa, we are getting little. And it's not good as far as the fighting of the COVID-19 is concerned. But we should also, as Africans, make sure that we promote comprehensive health sector reforms in Africa. And trade unions should play a critical role in that area to make sure that our health sector is very responsive when it comes to any pandemic. That thing should be, done by the trade unions to push for that one. But as I said before, this pandemic, I think it's a wake-up call for most of the trade unions for better advancing labor and the other social agenda through social dialogue. We need to continue strengthening our capacities on how we can continue to engage, especially in the area of revitalization and transformation of our unions, organizing, social dialogue and collective bargaining, and to make sure that women and young workers are also involved, on how we can also strengthen our human and financial resources, because without human and financial resources, all the objectives and targets cannot be reached. But also on how we can improve our digital infrastructure and communication, because COVID-19 somehow it has taught us a good lesson that we should go according to the fourth industrial revolution, but also to promote and advocate for human-centered recovery from COVID crisis, so as to realize the ambition of the centenary declaration for a future of work with social justice and decent all for all. I thank you very much, Comrade Moderator, for giving me the opportunity to participate and share with you those few views in line with the trade union responses towards against the COVID-19. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Brother Zunda. I think, like Brother Eric, you have also done justice to this topic. We can always learn. I had thought Eric exhausted all the areas, little realizing that you are going to remind us of other very pertinent issues that ought to be fully adhered to and actioned upon by trade unions. We want to thank you very, very much for that. I cannot belabor in terms of really the importance of how we should focus our efforts towards the realization of Goal 8 in particular, in order to be able to address the whole question of poverty, but also to ensure that there is decent employment for all, to bridge, also help bridge the inequality gaps. Thank you very much. I think that was quite an important element that you brought to the fore. And we cannot also underestimate the importance of building the movement. The membership of the trade union movement at the moment is very, very low compared to really what you have on record. If we look at the membership of the two continental organizations vis-a-vis the total workforce of the continent, there is much to be done in that area. So we want to commend those who have already made strides, even in the course of this COVID-19 crisis, by way of recruitment of new membership, because I do quite remember in my work with some of the unions, for instance, in Burundi, CSB has been able to achieve a 60% membership growth. That new membership drawn largely from the informal economy. That is quite significant. This is based upon a recent study that we conducted. They are really, making tremendous effort. And they use also the COVID as an intervention tool in terms of their advocacy for, PPEs and also the installation of hand washing facilities in vantage, locations in workplaces, through which they were also able to get more membership, particularly, when we talk about the workplace in the context of the market and lorry parks. So through that, they were seen as providing, service, and they were able to get new members by way of doing that. The COVID vaccine should be seen as a global public good. I think the ILO has raised its voice on this, and the union movement, your voice on this. Movements are also calling for that. And we have to make sure we amplify that voice to make sure that everyone is vaccinated. This COVID is going to remain with us. It is not a disease that is going to be, completely eradicated. But how do we live side by side with the disease?
You are muted, Kabu.
Try to, it's like that. We need to, work towards that situation of living side by side with it. So all of us need to be vaccinated. And this has to be seen as a public good. In fact, the markets, the labor market will become restrictive if we do not really go that far of ensuring that there is universal vaccination for all. Even for the children, we have to make sure that the science work towards coming up with their own vaccine. That is very, very important. I want to commend you for that. Of course, in this new environment, you have also pointed at the need for, the trade unions to also rejuvenate itself. That is very important. We cannot continue to do business as usual. In terms of the internal dynamics, particularly in terms of internal democracy. You touched on that, I agree. And also they are becoming more masculine. We need to make sure that we feminize the movement. We also make the movement youthful by way of increasing the membership of women, the membership of young people within the ranks, and also ensuring their inclusion in decision-making bodies within the movement. That is very, very important.
Kabu, your network is
I want to
on
thank
and
you.
off.
And yes, I'm in a small crisis.
Yeah, it's on and off. Maybe
I'm
just
surviving
summarize.
now on my mobile. Can you hear me?
It's on and off. Maybe you can just summarize.
Because the energy is falling down. That is the reason.
Okay.
I am inviting you now to take the floor whilst I look into the other aspect. So, Sister Caroline, you have the floor. You are going to talk about the dimension of digitalization. I can't even see the paper where I had written your topic. But please come forward and address us on the opportunities for digital solutions for East African trade unions under the COVID-19 crisis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kabu. This was a last-minute presentation, so I'll try to do justice to it. So my presentation is basically divided into 3 areas: drivers for change, a look at new technologies to employment effect, and then what will be the policy interventions for us trade unions. First of all, before I go on to drivers for change, we need to understand the digital divide and COVID-19. The impact of digital divide has never been felt more severely by developing countries than in this pandemic. And we are seeing that access to ICT infrastructure and digital technologies determined the economic impact of the lockdowns. And we can see what the lockdowns have done to our countries, particularly from East Africa, that do not, have a well-developed ICT infrastructure. So which means digitally advanced countries will recover faster from this pandemic than us who are not digitally advanced. So there's the issue of inequality that is being driven by digital divide during COVID-19. We are seeing this digital divides continuing to grow. But what are the drivers of change relevant for the future of work when you talk about digitalization? Because if we want to look at the opportunities, the challenges, and the key issues that are there within the discussions around digitalization, we need to know what is driving the change for future of work, but specifically looking at how digitalization is driving this change. So one of the issue is extreme longevity. There's an increase in lifespan, which will change the nature of career and learning. Current Africa is a youthful continent. I think previous speakers have talked a lot with regard to issue around youth. So if you're talking about trade union and digitalization, there is an urgent need for us to be part and parcel of policy formulation, to be part and parcel of policy implementation that lead digital change, because a majority of our population are actually youth, which means digital organizing and putting some of our work online. There's an issue around rise of smart machines and systems, automation that is driving human workers out of red and repetitive tasks, which means this will affect the number of our union members that we have who are being replaced by machines. We have the issue of computational world, massive increase in sensors and processing power, make the world a programmable system. And we've seen during this COVID period, some of the things have actually gone online. Some of the things have actually been, digitalized. Some of the processes that we were doing, some of the tasks that we have been doing. The issue around new media ecology, new communication tools require new media literacy, just beyond the usual text. We are seeing a lot of Twitter, a lot of social, a lot of Facebook, a lot of TikTok. This is where people are now driving the advertisement. Now nobody is reading the newspaper. So if you're putting your advertisement or your advocacy work in the newspaper, then not many people are reading. We are seeing the print media also doing both digital and both text or hard copy newspapers out there. And then there's the issue around superstructured organization, social technologies that are driving new forms of production and value creation. And when I talk about superstructures, it basically means to create a structure that goes beyond basic forms and processes which we are familiar of. And then also the issue around global connectivity. There's an increased global connectivity that puts diversity and adaptability at the center of organizational operation. We are seeing many organizations going, crossing borders. I see Safaricom are now setting house in Ethiopia. KCB Bank in East Africa is one of the most connected bank in East Africa. If I'm in South Sudan and I have a Kenyan account, if I go to South Sudan, I transact as if I'm in Kenya. I will go to the counter, I will deposit, I will withdraw from my Kenyan account, but in South Sudan. So with looking at those drivers, what can trade unions do? I will briefly take you through 4 steps in terms of the opportunities that are there for trade unions with regards to digitalization. So before a task is digitalized, it goes through these 4 steps, and we need to be at each of that step to be able to influence digital, to create decent job, or to protect our workers that will be either redundant or lose their job because of an introduction of a new technology. So there is a new technology in place. It goes through automation potential. Then there's technology diffusion. This is, being absorbed in the company, and then the worker needs to adjust. And then once it's done, the worker's previous job will either be destroyed, that means it will become obsolete, or the worker will have to relearn, will have to upskill for the new job that will be created by the new technology. So just briefly to explain what automation potential means, it basically looks at how many and which kind of jobs might be automated in the near future. So as we organize our own unions, under sector unions, we need, Dr. Omolo talked about research capacity to impact, our collective bargainings. We as workers' representatives, are we looking at our workplace and foreseeing in the future which jobs might be automated? And then we need to focus, our focus need to be on explaining the difference in corresponding before automation and after automation. We need to start to prepare our workers, because we cannot avoid, technology change and digitalization is coming. So we need to be prepared. So we need to also prepare our own membership. Automation potential only capture technological feasibility to automate jobs, which must not be equated to actual employment effect. So at this point, we are just automated. It might take 5 years, it might take 10 years, or it might take less. And then technology diffuse. We have looked at technology potential in terms of automation potential. This task will 100% be automated. So how do we start to diffuse this technology into the, it's normally a slow process, and it also leaves us time to adjust because we have already looked ahead. We've already forecasted which job is going to be automated, and therefore we are giving our members, time to adjust. So diffusion is slow due to high cost, uncertainty, the need to undergo organizational change for implementation of these technologies, and the need to acquiring workers with suitable skills. So this is a process that we need to be engaged in as a company is going through this restructuring of diffusing a new technology. So if your members are from the printing press, you need to look at what is the future of printing press. If your workers are working within the agricultural sector, you need to look at what is the future technology in this sector, and how do I prepare and workers within that particular company to be able to be relevant when that technology arrives. And then there's the process of worker adjustment. Issues of workers are flexible and adjust. In fact, much of the adjustment to automation is not made by making seemingly replaceable occupations redundant, but workers doing other tasks in the same occupation. And the ILO has talked about lifelong learning. So this is lifelong learning actually sits central to digitalization and technological change. Being an occupation that is at risk, thus does not necessarily imply that the worker is about to lose his or her job, but that worker has to adopt by switching to the right task and learning the right skill. So as technology comes in, there are new opportunities that are being developed. And research out there has actually shown us this, that when a new technology was brought, yes, jobs were lost, tasks were lost, but it has created twice or three times the new jobs. And then the last process is job destruction and creation. While automation indeed does displace jobs, it simultaneously creates other jobs. I've already mentioned this. The overall effect on the number of jobs and employment has actually been positive, not really negative. Digital technologies will reduce or actually raise labor demand. So as we prepare our members when a new technology comes through, from the process of automation potential, this is basically forecasting in our sectors, whether it's the medical sector, whether it's tourism sector, whether it's agriculture sector, service sector, and then how we negotiate. And this is where the CBAs come to play. Dr. Omolo talked about it. Is it our normal CBA? Do we need to change the way we do them? And this is where the discussion of technological diffusion comes in. This technology will arrive in our company, let's say 10 years from now. But in these 10 years, we need our employees to be retrained, to relearn, or to be given a good, send-off package, and then give the workers a time to adjust to a new job or loss of the old job. So I would like to finish my intervention by saying, other than going through, the first process was at factory level, as technology is changing, is being introduced. But also the next level whereby there's an opportunity for us to engage in is the policy intervention areas. issues around education, evolving education system, and learning for a changed workplace. You are looking at, STEM skills through school systems. As we said, we have a youthful labor population. So we need to also encourage this youth to actually take up, STEM skills. Even if you've not done it as your training, you can still learn issues, things like coding and all that. Another policy intervention area is the issue around active private sector engagement in curriculum development. Has been a major problem in terms of the common statement outside there that we are graduating students that do not match what the labor force required. There's a mismatch between education and what the labor force requires. So how can we be part and parcel of this discussion to ensure that factory and education, or workplace and education, talk together to ensure that the skills that they are developing will actually meet the rapid digital environment that is changing. Issues around government incentives for private sector to treat human as part of, capital. Someone talked about tax benefits and other incentives. Policy to encourage to invest in human capital, including creation of jobs and capacity building and wage growth. We have policy intervention around public-private partnership to stimulate and enable digital infrastructure that will lead to creation of decent jobs. And then the issue of rethinking income, and this is where technology, the part of technology diffusions come in. Because as someone is losing his task, or his task is being rendered obsolete, you need to offer the person an exit or something to reduce the pressure he has on his income. So issues like universal basic income, I think the trade unions have talked a lot, advocated a lot around the issue of universal basic income during this period of COVID-19, issues around conditional transfers, adapted social safety nets could be also considered in this instance. And COVID-19 actually brought this out really clearly in terms of how our social security systems in East Africa prepared structured to be able to withstand a pandemic and to be able to support its members. The issue about rethink transition support and safety nets for workers. This is also linked to rethinking incomes also, issues around sectors, location.
Your voice is breaking now.
Oh, sorry, Kabu. And then embracing technology.
Hello?
And situation. Kabu, can you hear me? Is anybody hearing me?
We can hear you, Caroline.
Okay. And then also, focus on job creation, accelerate the creation of digital jobs in particularly, and digitally enabled opportunities to earn income. And then the issue around innovate how humans work alongside a machine. Greater interaction will raise productivity, because these machines are also operated by people. So it often requires, higher skills, new technology interface, because technology keeps on changing. So your capacity in technology today might become obsolete tomorrow with just a slight change in a technology. So that's why I said lifelong learning is very key in terms of digitalization and of digitalization, issues around just transition, a plan for just transition that provides and guarantees better and decent jobs, social protection, and more training opportunities. Design digital industrial policies, you know, our industrial policies speaking to the issue of digital transformation in terms of building the infrastructure and bridging the growing digital divide that exists. And then a very important issue been discussed by the previous speakers, the trade agreements that are taking place, whether it's the ACFTA, whether it's the US-Kenya free trade agreement. What does it say about digital industrialization? And then South-South regional digital cooperation can be an important way forward for small developing countries. So these are just some of the policy intervention areas that trade unions need to be part of if we have to make digitalization. So you have a choice when there's a digital disruption. It definitely brings in fear. So in a company, when there's a talk or when there's a process of bringing any new technology, there's always fear. And then we need to, you know, to provide insight on how we model our way forward with this digital disruption that has been brought in place, giving some kind of direction for business transformation that actually protects the workers' right or offer an alternative to this work. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sister Caroline. I hope I'm audible enough. I can't really go all over the place, but just to highlight the importance of the employment impact of the shift towards technology, and in particular, the digital technology. You have actually highlighted in terms of how this can result into the creation of new jobs, but of course, substitution of some jobs, and also the elimination of some jobs, as well as the redefinition or transformation of some jobs. And to cope with this type of situation, there is need for, you know, reorienting the whole educational curriculum to also address the new challenges. And you have pointed out the importance of lifelong learning and also the need for a just transition that can actually give people some degree of protection for them not to be outrightly left out. Protection in terms of giving the opportunity to be retrained so that they can tap into the new opportunities that may arise. So with that, I want to thank you very, very much. And now I will not go back to the three panelists and myself, but we want to open up the floor for questions, comments, just briefly, because we are a little outside the time now. And in that respect, we also give the presenters the opportunity to check in the chat box to see if there are questions in the chat box that they can, you know, respond to. But for now, let me open up the floor, and anyone who would like to speak, please identify yourself and ask your question and try to be very precise. Thank you.
I see Thomas Kemboi.
Oh. floor. My gadget is not seeing you. So Thomas, you have the floor.
Yes. How are you? Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, my name is Thomas. Yes, my name is Thomas Boy. I'm Deputy General Secretary, Kenya Plantation. For what I've heard today is we have a very good topic about the issues which has been discussed by the presenters.
Your voice is breaking, Thomas.
Okay, I'm saying I'm impressed with what you have told. Yes.
Your voice is breaking, so
Kabu,
you may need to repeat.
Hear him. Maybe it's your connection, Kabu. We can hear him
probably
clearly.
it's from my own side, and in
Yes.
that case, I would like to ask Inviolata to be on standby and even probably take over, because my gadget is facing some challenges in terms of the energy.
Okay. Kembo, you can go on.
Oh,
Okay, thank you, Kabu. Yes, go on.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much for giving me this chance. What I want to say is that I want to recognize what your presenters of today and yesterday's meeting. I'm very, very happy for what I've heard, especially what you are proposing, that we need to embrace the youthful in the trade unions movement to come and assist in this trade unions organization. And you have said that the issue of digital comes after the COVID-19, which affect this country mostly, especially in working industries and hotels, and also in the tourism. It has affected so much, which we need to see that this pandemic, when it goes away, everything comes to the normal. So we want to embrace and also support the organization, and maybe what we can do is to ask the financial institution to assist when the COVID-19 goes away. So we request that you empower these countries so that they can still do the seminars and other means of getting these organizations to come back to the normal, the situation which they were in before the COVID-19. And we support the workshop, and we want to thank you very much for making sure that we have this seminar, so that we start from there, and going forward, we shall engage and agree on what to do comes during this economic time. And according to the digital currently in place, we want to embrace that when we are dealing with the COVID-19, we are coming to the new dispensation of having this digital era, which we need to bring in the young people, that is the young ladies and the young boys or men, so that they can come and join and make sure that they take over this digital era, because it is their time. So I'm very happy to join you today and in this forum. Thank you very much, Kabu.
Thank you, Kabu. Should I take over? Okay, I think we can still stretch a bit until 1:30, if our interpreters allow us, so that we give a bit of an opportunity for the participants to add their views. There has been a lot of rich inputs by our presenters from this session. Kabu talking about trade union responses in times of COVID, representing Dr. Mamazingo. Then the interventions by our regional organizations, Brother Eric and Brother Emmanuel, including the opportunities for digital solutions for Eastern African trade unions under COVID, the last presentation. So I see Jacob Omolo, you have your hand up, but we also want to see many more hands, your reflections on the critical issues, elements that have been flagged out of this discussion. Brother Jacob, over to you in 1 minute.
Thank you so much, Involata, and thank you, Caroline, for the comprehensive discussion. I agree with you fully that lifelong learning, training and retraining of workers is very important if we are to survive in this changing world of work. So where I wanted your intervention is in this observation that majority of our employers, particularly in the East African region, do not invest in workers training. And they neither invest in terms of providing workers with time off or leave to go for training, nor financing or sponsoring such training. So the question is, in your view and based on your experience, what is it that we as trade unions need to do, maybe in collaboration with employers and even government, to promote lifelong learning, training, and retraining of workers? Thank you.
Thank you. That was a question directed to Carol. Take note of that when you give your roundup for this session at around 1:30. You can also answer this question. I see Sister Kim from North Uganda. Please take the floor in 1 minute. Agnes.
Agnes is mute.
You are on mute. And yes.
Okay. Are you getting me now?
Yes.
Yes. Now, my only issue is from all the interventions I've had from our sisters and brothers, I feel we need to go back on the drawing board as trade unions to ensure that most of these interventions are inclusive in our CBAs, and as sisters have guided, we need to change our tactics and ways of how we can now ensure that our CBAs are enriched with all these new changes, because they've come to stay, especially the digital era has come. And with the COVID-19, looking at our population and our children at home and at universities and other tertiary institutions, for sure, this is a very, very now big issue which we need to tackle with governments to ensure that they invest more money, they budget more money for more monies for this digital era, because not only affecting the workplaces, but also education institutions. So as trade unions, it's our role as we fight for both our members and also our children. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm still scrolling through the platform to see whether there are any hands, but at the moment there are none. But in the chat, there are comments around, are we ready as East African trade unions to address the digital divide? And I'm sure as we are in this session, the digital divide is also an elephant in the room. I see that participants like Amina from South Sudan, they are already saying due to poor network, we cannot be able to follow the session. So when we are talking about digitalization in embracing technology, what are we saying about the digital divide? Then other comments include the integrate young workers into the trade union structures in a meaningful way. This will be a great initiative for revitalization and renewal. This is from Barbara. She's also saying it is important that the voices of young workers are heard. Young workers need to be empowered. On young workers, again, Eric is saying, I think young workers are ready to join the trade unions. The challenge is how to get them benefits of being members of the unions against the backdrop of dynamics in the job market where permanent and pensionable workers are becoming fewer. So these are some of the comments that I'm picking from the chat. I see Akasina Jessica. Please take the floor.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jessica Kasina. I'm the national chair lady, Go to Women Kenya. What I want to contribute is that I want to appreciate the presenters, because what is coming out clearly is that whether we like it or not, we need to embrace the new technology amongst us for us to continue working together with the other young workers who are on board right now. Secondly, we need to work hand in hand with the young workers to make them understand fully what trade union means in their lives and also at the world of work as for now. And lastly, what I've come to realize is that the COVID pandemic has come to get us out of our comfort zone as union leaders, to get out and change our style of working and our styles of leadership in the trade unions, to make sure that we bring on board the young workers who have not yet understood what the trade union means. Back to you. That's what I can say. Otherwise, thank you for the presenters.
Violeta, back now.
Okay, you can take over.
Yes.
We agreed to close the session at 1:30. We still have 15 minutes. And Caroline.
We have 15 minutes.
Yes, and Caroline will be the last speaker.
Okay, thank you.
Over to you.
Yes, and are we still picking questions and comments from the floor?
Yes, from the floor, including some issues that are in the chat room that you can bring to the floor.
For the chat rooms, if you can be reading those ones, if there is anything from the chat room that you can pick, you can raise it so that we put it to the house. But let us listen to those who would like to intervene directly by asking questions and also contributing to the whole debate. Not necessarily asking questions, but if they have their own angle through which they are looking at the issues, raise your hand, then we can invite you. Okay?
While we are waiting for questions, Kabum, there is also something in the chat that you might want to participants to reflect on.
Okay.
The issue of good internal governance. I think it was mentioned yesterday in our opening session that it's also important to give credibility to our trade union organizations, and that this can encourage workers to join trade unions and be active. This was also emphasized by the two regional presenters, Comrade Kirimanzi and Brother Nzunda.
Yes, I think that is quite an important area. the whole issue of union democracy has to be seen in the context of consent with consent and not consent without consent. What do I mean? We do not need, as leaders, trade union leaders do not need to create the gap between them and membership. When you go to the Congress, you are given a mandate. In the implementation of that mandate, on a very regular basis, you should interface with membership. You have to incorporate them as you move forward. They have to guide you. By the way, in fact, the members are the people who actually drive the whole democratic machinery, and that has to be guaranteed. Often you find a situation wherein after delegate conferences, the next time trade union leadership can interface with membership will be again when it is time for the next delegate conference. And also the all boil it just around the whole issue of election. You should have a regular interaction with membership as one. Importantly, you should also look at the composition of even the leadership. If there is need for you to include the young workers, include them. If there is need for you to include women, include them. If there is need for you to include other underrepresented groups, such as people with disability or migrant workers, or workers in precarious employment conditions, those that probably you may not think of, their voices are important in the leadership. This is the only way you can shape the whole mandate of the organization to reflect the interest of all and sundry. So that aspect of ensuring that inclusive leadership is very, very important. And also to make sure that the union's policies also speak to the needs of members. You have to ask them in terms of what are your needs? What are the demands? How can we articulate them? How can you be part of the process? So this is very important. I think over the years, we have seen, a fallback situation in that particular respect. That has to be improved. It is very, very important for the trade union leadership, particularly on the part of the continental organizations as well as the sub-regional organizations, to make sure that at the ground level, in the national context, the grassroots are also the driving force of the movement as a whole. That is very, very important. You cannot build strong unions in terms of militancy without proper mobilization, without capturing from time to time the energy and also the human power of the movement behind the leadership. You need to create that recognition of ensuring interfacing with the membership and to also engineer the drive of the entire machinery of the leadership. That is very, very important. That is not only to be seen in that context, because even for their effective representation and participation in that process, they may need capacity. Yes.
I'm just getting a notification from my technical team. The meeting might end any time.
Yes. So let me just conclude. That one, I think I have hammered that point home. In that case, I'm not going back to Eric. I'm not going back to Zunda, but to thank them immensely for their brilliant, expose. I think they have actually nourished us greatly this morning or this afternoon. It has been quite enriching. We hope they will be able to avail, if they have written presentations, to send them over to ETUC Secretariat so that it can be part of the proper record of this seminar. And with that, I thank you very much. I want to hand over now finally to Carol to round up and close the meeting. or adjourn the meeting to tomorrow. Thank you very much. Carol, you have the floor.
Okay, Brother Kabu, I'm being told we have 5 more minutes. So if Eric or Nzunda would have an issue they want to raise urgently, I'm free to give them 1.5 minutes each.
Okay, so Eric, come on board and followed quickly by Zunda. They will leave everything to Carol.
Thank you, comrades. I think I have not many things to say, but I just that's my take on the intervention now, and also some thoughts come from the participants. That I can say is I just take 3 things quickly. Is the first, the trillion must be build the capacity in terms of to be more efficient in terms of effective participation and national policy develop elaboration, follow-up, and also monitoring and evaluation. But also I mentioned that the digitalization is very, very, very big opportunity in terms of create job creation, but also to take another way to work, especially for trade unions, to use that digital technology in terms of organization, in terms of education program, workers education programs, recruitment, etc., etc. Even if to use it as in the social dialogue, as a social dialogue tools is very important. Maybe the last point is the importance of internal democracy and governance of trade unions. You need to improve it, and we need also to prepare the future of the trade union movement in terms of renewal, in terms of to integrate the young people, not only in the structure, but also to interest them, because it's not the problem only to integrate in the structure, but if we need to interest, to create some interest to that young people. I think in 1 minute, that's what that I can say, and thank you very much again to invite ITUC Africa to participate on this webinar. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Eric. Over to you, Zunda.
Thank you very much, Comrade Kabu. Mine also is in line with what you have just raised, and Comrade Eric. I think, as I mentioned before, really we need to comprehend and rethink or review our policies and the structure and the actions, as you put it, to be responsive to address internal democracy and members' issues. I think that one is key. Without doing that, I think we'll be overtaken by events, and the labor movement will become irrelevant. So all the issues to do with the succession, the programs, to make sure that the youth are involved in all many structures of the labor movement, not only to be members, but to be part and part of the leadership of the unions, not living alone for all the guys. Also to make sure that women are also involved. So I think if we review our policies and structure and actions, I think we'll be able to be responsible to address internal democracy and the governance and member issues if we will do that. Otherwise, I'd like to take this opportunity once again to thank the organizers, Ituku, the executive secretary, he has done very well, and also ACTRAV to facilitate this webinar. And I hope we'll meet you, or we'll meet you in the near future and talk to you in another subject matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brother Zunda. So, Sister Carol, over to you now.
Thank you very, very, very much. I will, before I conclude, I'd like to answer a question that my professor gave me, and I think he actually has the answer to that very difficult question. But I think you answered part of that question in your intervention, Prof. Omolo. We work, how do you call it? Employers are not, training workers. They are not giving them time off, leave to go for training. But in our CBAs, we could include these clauses. How many days does our member get for training, and what kind of training? The way you are saying, we need to change the way we do our CBAs. That's one of the things. The other thing is within the policy intervention. If the employers are not doing, do we need to put some policy in place to compel them to do it? Probably share the Kenyan experience on TVET certification of on-the-job training. And then also, if you look at our Scandinavian countries, the kind of safety net they have, when you lose your job, you get some unemployment benefit. But that unemployment benefit is also accompanied by some kind of training, either reskilling, either get upskilling, or getting a whole new training for you not to stay unemployed for long. I remember some of my Danish colleagues were saying it is very difficult for you to be receiving an employment benefit for more than a year. Within that year, there are processes and that you need to go through for you to continue having that. So do we put a policy in place that will compel the employers to do that? But also, last but not least, can we really look at, you already mentioned the issue of research education. Dr. Kech also talked about it. Kuglo talked about it also. We have labor training centers. ITUC has the African Labor Research and Education Institute. In Kenya, we have the Tom Mboya Labor College. In Tanzania, we have the Mbeya College. In Uganda, I'm not so sure if it's still there, we have the Workers College. So there are need for us to review the kind of trainings that we are offering in this institute that will also take part of those kind of lifelong learning, issues of reskilling and retraining. This also goes to ACTRAV, Turin. Do we only continue doing our traditional training on CBA, social protection and all that? Do we need to do some kind of specified training, but also based on research, as Prof. Omolo had already alluded to? Can we focus in our research and look at which jobs are likely to undergo some kind of digital transformation? So can we offer some kind of training to our members to upskill or reskill? So I think it goes both ways. We need to also do our part. We need to also engage the policy intervention that will compel employers to be able to put that in place. And also we need to rethink our CBA negotiations. So with that, I would like to tell our participants, thank you. So tomorrow, same time, same place, the virtual meeting room will be opened by 9:30. Tomorrow will be a very short day. We'll actually just have 1 hour, 30 minutes. So please join in very early so that we also finish early. We only have one key presentation, and then we also will be closing. I am seeing my director, Wellington Chibebe. Or you are just saying hi? Okay. Okay, so I think the meeting is adjourned tomorrow. Come early so that we finish early also. Bye, kwaheri. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Carol. See you tomorrow.
See you.